All right, this is Citizenship and Immigration Attorney Parviz Malakouti. Today is October 20th, 2025, and this is our 43rd Mobility Space. Today we're talking about the future of citizenships by investment. And I said citizenships by investment for a reason. And that's in part because we want to talk about not necessarily just the future of the industry, although I think we'll talk about that a little bit as well, but the actual future of citizenships that people attain in the future, and of course, the citizenships as a whole, and of course, their own mobility benefits. As a reminder, this is number 43 in our series of 50 mobility spaces this year on the hottest topics in dual citizenship, freedom of movement, sovereignty, and of course, passports. Anybody who is listening who wants to speak is welcome to speak. All you have to do is hit the request button and I will approve it right away. No need to wait to be invited, although I will invite people if they show up. So this is a little bit of an extension of our last mobility space, number 42, on genuine links and connection to country of second citizenship. In that space, which was just 4 days ago on October 16th, we spilled into talking about some of the vulnerabilities that a person who naturalizes in a foreign country might have, especially if they don't have that much connection to the country. And the way we define connection is either a strong blood tie, meaning a parent or grandparent born there, or being born there, or of course, a period of residency there. Okay, so people who naturalize in other countries by methods that do not involve one of those, for example, by citizenship by investment, or citizenship by merit or exception, or distant citizenship by descent. So citizenship by descent, where the applicant is qualifying through, let's say, a great grandparent. Those people, we believe, the people who are talking in the last space, including myself, those people are a little bit more vulnerable to attacks on their citizenships, and specifically attacks to particular benefits of those citizenships. So we just wanted to expand on that space with today's space and kind of focus a little bit on CBIs, talk about a little bit of light news, what we've been seeing recently in the space, and then, of course, talk about and speculate about what we think the future of those CBIs are. I'd like to split the way I think about the future of CBI is kind of splitting into three categories. The first is the future of individual citizenships that people got by investment themselves. So what I mean is a person obtained a citizenship by investment in Caribbean country, or let's say some other country. They have that citizenship. What's the future of the status of that citizenship? Meaning, how likely are they to experience some sort of degradation in the citizenship or involuntary revocation? That's category number one. Category number two is the future of commonly associated benefits, mobility benefits of that citizenship. So take the same example, a person gets a citizenship by investment in a Caribbean country or otherwise. They have visa-free access. They enjoy treaty benefits of that country, so possibly residency benefits, etc. And the question is, how likely are those people to be stripped of some of those benefits? Okay, and the one that we've talked about probably the most frequently that comes to mind first is visa-free access, because it's relatively easy to deny somebody visa-free access, especially as visa-free is becoming visa light, as I call it nowadays. So that's the second category. And then the third category, of, let's call it the future of CBIs, I would consider basically the industry. What is the future of the CBI industry? Okay, what is the future of countries continuing to offer citizenships by investment? Are we seeing a shift in the profile of the countries that offer citizenships by investment? Are we going to continue to see a shift? And I'll just go bottom line up front. I do think we are seeing a shift in the profile of countries that offer CBIs and that are going to continue to offer CBIs, and a profile in the countries that are going to stop offering CBIs. So that's kind of the third category that I think about when I think about the future of CBIs, right? All are important, but if you're not an industry official, professional, if you're just somebody that's an aficionado, citizenship collector, passport collector, you're probably more interested in the first two categories, and specifically the second category. What's going to be the status of mobility benefits that you obtained because you got or are going to get a citizenship by investment, right? So those are things that I'd like to talk about. And I guess I would kick off the conversation by saying, what we're seeing, at least what I believe we're seeing, is an increase in countries trying to inquire about the method of how somebody got a citizenship. Okay, so third-party countries that are offering mobility benefits want to know increasingly how a person got that citizenship, right? So we spoke about in the last space the case of Hungarian simplified naturalization, where Hungarian citizens who were born outside of the country prima facie don't qualify for ESTA anymore. I think that started in 2022. So in that case, that's an instance of the U.S. Department of State reaching into a country that they have a visa-free agreement with, and basically making an inquiry into the method of acquisition of that citizenship, and then making a decision to deny that benefit of visa-free access to people who got the citizenship other than by birth in the country, right? So that's one example, and we're seeing this happen, more frequently, right? So we obviously saw, 2 years ago, Vanuatu lost visa-free access to the EU. Visa-free access is just an easier attack vector for stripping a mobility benefit of a person by virtue of them having obtained obtained the citizenship by investment, right? Um, One of the reasons that I think visa-free access, if not the most important reason that visa-free access is so easy of an attack vector, is because we are increasingly moving towards ETAs as a requirement, electronic travel authorization. Whereas previously, and even still to this day, you would travel visa-free if you came from a country that had strong visa-free agreements. You travel visa free by basically just booking your flight, hopping on the flight, and showing up at immigration control with your passport. And we're seeing increasingly that that's no longer the case. We're having the rise of these things we call ETAs, electronic travel authorization, which requires a person to fill out a little application online. Granted, the ETAs stop well short of a full-on visa application. Typically, they don't require the person to submit all kinds of documentation, to schedule an appointment to go in person. But the key point is the ETA applicant still has to file an application online. And that application has questions, right? And through those questions, the receiving country can start discriminating, or basically determine, they can start soliciting information on the basis of which they can discriminate, whether they want to start stripping people of visa-free access or not. So the Shenzhen area is implementing ETIAS. That's been delayed several times, but now the most recent update is that the ETIAS ETA system is supposed to come online in late 2026. The UK implemented their ETA system this year. Japan's implementing an ETA system. Australia. This is just the trend of where we're going. And the more countries have ETAs, the easier it is for them to just put on a question of, okay, how did you obtain this citizenship? If it's by investment, okay, boom. Obviously, that citizen by investment is now at the mercy of the foreign country for however that country wants to treat them. So this is part of the reason, probably the main reason, that I see visa-free access as being the most vulnerable of the mobility benefits of people who have citizenships by investment. But that's not all. It's not just visa-free. Those people also experience vulnerabilities with visa and residency applications, KYC AML questions. We're seeing increasingly that banks and other agencies, when a person submits their identification documents, if it's a passport, or if the person claims a particular citizenship, they're asked the question, did you obtain this country citizenship by investment? So that's another inquiry point that we're seeing. And these inquiry points, in my opinion, are growing. The more they grow, the more other countries are going to know that a person, the method by which a person got their citizenship, and then of course that those other countries can decide how they want to treat those people. As a result, I see, and I've said this before, I'm a broken record now for people who've been on previous spaces, but I realize we have new listeners. This is why I see what I call springboard benefits as most vulnerable to attacks and antagonism towards citizenships by investment. Okay, because all springboard benefits rely on the cooperation and assent of a foreign country in order for the person to basically enjoy that benefit, right? So that's an issue. That's a big issue for people who have CBIs already, or people who are thinking about getting CBIs moving forward. I believe if you are a prospective applicant for CBI, and I tell this to my clients or anybody who even does a consult with me, you should discount springboard benefits of citizenships by investments accordingly. What I mean by discount is to acknowledge and assume a vulnerability to those benefits that core mobility benefits of that citizenship will not have. Okay, so springboard benefits, right? Visa-free access, satellite residency rights in a convention, or excuse me, a treaty, area like the EU, Mercosur, etc. Being member, a country being member of a visa treaty like the E2 treaty visa, these are all springboard benefits. Okay, you're using one country, okay, your country of citizenship, in order to land in another country. So the third country is the landing pad. The country of citizenship that you obtain is the springboard. Those are what I call springboard benefits. Core mobility benefits are much less vulnerable to this trend against CBI. Core mobility benefits are benefits of mobility that the citizen gets in the actual country of citizenship. So first and foremost, immediate highest right of entry, residency, and let's call it work authorization in that country, right? That's a core mobility benefit. That's the most important core mobility benefits, or maybe you could say those are three separate, however you want to look at it. Maybe those are three separate but related core mobility benefits. Those are the least vulnerable benefits, mobility benefits, that a person who gets citizenship by investment has, okay? Because as long as that country, the country that they obtain the citizenship from, is not antagonistic to citizenship by investment. And by the way, we cannot take that for granted, because regimes change and administrations change in these countries. And sometimes there is a change in the political winds, the domestic political winds, vis-a-vis the attitude towards the CBI. But as long as that country is not antagonistic to its own CBIs that it's issued, the applicant is relatively secure in their ability to immediately enter and, of course, live in that country. That's why I consider those benefits to be more robust. What I've said before is that I consider probably the second most robust mobility benefit of a citizen by investment to be issuance of a valid passport. Okay, so the ability to get a passport, not the visa-free access. Visa-free access is not a function of a passport. Visa-free access is a function of citizenship, but I'm talking about the actual travel document, right? And I classify that as a hybrid core slash springboard mobility benefit. Why? Because being able to use the passport, it does actually require, for travel to other countries, it does require assent and recognition from other countries. They have to recognize the travel document in order to allow you to travel there on that document. Typically, even if you're trying to use visa-free access from another citizenship that you have. And it also incorporates the ability to enter the country of citizenship, right? Which is the CBI. So I consider the issuance of the passport to be kind of a hybrid core slash satellite mobility benefit. So I believe, and I'll wrap this up, and then I'll throw a question out if Jay can speak, or anybody else that wants to speak. So I believe moving forward that the most robust mobility benefits that CBI applicants and citizens by investment can start thinking about relying on is immediate highest right of entry, residency, and work authorization in the country of citizenship, and issuance of that passport, right? So I got more to talk about here, and we want to talk about Roger Ver again, Andrew Tate, who came up, and then Mehul Choksi, okay, an Indian national who's accused of defrauding Punjab National Bank, and his whole saga. So we have more to talk about, but I want to pause it there. And it looks like we only have one speaker so far, but he's a good one, and that's Jay. So I'll pause and kick out a question to Jay. Okay, general question. Jay, where do you think the future of citizenships by investment is going? And you could take that in many of the directions that you want.
So I would say that the future of citizenship by investment is likely going to go into the direction where countries with core mobility benefits that are quite valuable, countries like Turkey and Serbia, for example, more countries like that with that sort of profile, medium-sized to larger countries with relatively robust economies on a global scale may begin to start offering this benefit, and that might eventually be seen as more valuable if is not already seen as more valuable by prospective investor uh, investor citizens of these countries than countries that have potentially better springboard benefits, because those springboard benefits are increasingly coming under threat.
Yeah, so larger countries with larger landmass, especially that include metropolitan cities or cities that are desirable to live in, part-time or full-time, are naturally going to provide a greater value proposition vis-a-vis the core mobility benefit, right? Because more, I think it's safe to say more people would like to live in Turkey or find that palatable than living in Sierra Leone. I don't think that's a controversial statement, right? Uh, so definitely agree on that point. But one other element, a couple other elements to keep in mind: countries that have larger populations are much less likely to have their domestic politics or even the perception of that country be changed by adopting, by naturalizing a few thousand citizens by investment than smaller countries are, right? Turkey has a CBI. Turkey has the most popular CBI in the world, right? But to when you think about the country of Turkey, right, or you talk about the country of Turkey, right, and just associations with it, how far down the line is the fact that they have a citizenship by investment? I think it's pretty low, because Turkey, pretty low down the list. Turkey is a huge country. They have a lot of things going on, right? Just in, both in fact and in perception. But if you take a country like St. Kitts and you just say, hey, what do you know about St. Kitts? Well, there's a lot of people out there that don't know a thing about St. Kitts other than it has a citizenship by investment, right? So I also think that those larger countries, larger landmass, and really probably I'm speaking more about larger population, more things going, bigger GDP. They also kind of have that going for them, right? They're just less likely, the world perception of them is less likely to be swayed, in my opinion, by adopting or having a CBI country than these smaller countries. And then one other thing is this, right? So I do see kind of a dichotomy that I think is going to form here, right? You have countries, let's call them large, larger landmass countries, okay, and large countries, landmass and population, that could adopt CBI. So let's say, or have CBI. Let's call like countries like Turkey or Argentina or Mexico. There's no plans, for Mexico to have a CBI, but I just kind of put a country like that in that category. Countries with large populations, attractive to live in, to vacation in, right? Even in the absence of CBIs, right? And then you have other countries. Let's say this new wave of African countries. Okay, so Sierra Leone, Sao Tome, Botswana, right? I think we're going to also see a little bit of a dichotomy between countries that offer CBI that have poor visa-free access, and they don't feel like they are at risk of pissing off, a country that gives them visa-free access and therefore revoking that visa-free access. Or let's say, they're vulnerable to fewer countries that give them favorable visa-free access because they don't have the visa-free access. So it's not a vulnerability that they have to think about. And then the countries on the other side who may have actually access to, visa-free access to countries that are desirable destinations. Okay, so let's call it like the Western world, the EU, United States, Canada, UK. I do think we're going to see a little bit, or I suspect we'll see a little bit of a difference, kind of in profile between those two countries in terms of how they treat visa free. I'm sorry, how they treat the proposition of offering a CBI country, right? If you're a country that does not have visa free access to any of those countries that I mentioned, yeah, you might be reliant on those countries politically, or diplomatically for other reasons, but it's just less of a cudgel that they can use against you. Okay, hey, we're going to strip visa-free access. So the country already doesn't have visa-free access, right? And that's also part of the reason I kind of suspect that we've seen a spate of these small African countries that don't really have great visa-free access, either start CBI programs, or in the case of Botswana, of course, announce that they have a CBI country, not country, a CBI program moving forward. I think that's part of the political calculus. Okay, whether by design or not, right? It's just these countries, they're already, what is the UK or US going to do to them as far as visa-free access? I mean, Botswana citizens had visa-free access to the UK until just 2 weeks ago, and then of course the UK suddenly announced that was going to be revoked. So value-wise, I see it being the way you said, Jay. Okay, which is the most attractive programs. Okay, for the consumer are going to be these large landmass, large population countries that are great destinations unto themselves. Okay, that's going to be the greatest value proposition. But as far as incentive for countries to start opening new CBI countries, I think we're going to see this trend of small countries, third world countries, less industrialized countries that do not offer their citizens strong visa-free access. I think they're going to start opening more CBI programs as a source of revenue generation. What do you think, Jay?
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. Just as a practical matter, there's no reason for the UK or the EU to try to pressure a country to get rid of a CBI program if that country doesn't have visa-free access to that territory that they would be concerned about people coming in who are citizens by investment. So there are potentially more benefits in terms of a country's revenue from a very from a poorer country in Africa, for example, as opposed to certain countries that already offer the programs, and there are fewer risks for existing citizens of those countries. One of the issues that Caribbean countries have been dealing with more recently is that they want to keep offering the citizenship by investment programs, but what they don't want is for novicians, for example, and people from St. Kitts to lose access visa-free to the European Union who were actually born there, who were actually people from that place, because they do have a responsibility to their citizens themselves.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And that's a pressing domestic consideration, right? If you're just born a citizen of a country that starts offering CBI and you get your visa-free travel access dinged because of that CBI, or it's threatened, you're going to be pissed off, justifiably so. Absolutely right. I think that's a consideration. If a country, here's the thing, I'll push back a little bit on one thing that you mentioned. If a country doesn't offer visa-free access to another country that offers a CBI, yes, they cannot, as we said, we agree on this point, they cannot use stripping visa-free access as an incentive or a disincentive, right, for the country to curtail or stop their CBI program. But also, if we look at the nature of visa applications, even tourist visa applications, a little bit more granularly, if we double click on them, not all, even people who have to apply for tourist visas to a particular country, okay, they're not all citizens are treated differently. Okay, the many countries have different terms, different default terms for a visa, for a tourist visa, based off of the nationality of the applicant. Right. So as you may know, Jay, and others, or some others listening on this call, like let's say, for example, the United States, you're not treated the same as, even if you go through the whole rigmarole of a B2 tourist visa application, DS-160, all that, the country of citizenship that you're applying for absolutely matters. Okay. And it matters in two very, hard, easily definable ways. And then in a third way that's very real, although less objective and more subjective. The first two ways are the duration of the visa. Okay. The visa validity period. Okay. So there's something called the visa reciprocity table in the US Department of State. Anybody can look it up. Maybe I'll link it here. And it shows basically how long of a B2 tourist visa, if it's granted, different applicants from different countries get. Okay, the max is typically 10 years, but there's some countries, okay, where the default is if you apply for a U.S. tourist visa from that nationality, you only get a 3-year or a 5-year visa, etc. And the second category is, well, I guess I'll combine this, the number of entries, right, that you can make, right. So the best case scenario if you're applying for a B2 tourist visa in the United States, right, is a 10-year validity period, multiple entry, right? But if you're from a particular country, right, U.S. Department of State can say, oh no, we're only giving you single entry. That means every time you want to visit the United States, you've got to apply for a new tourist visa. And then the third way is, we treat, it's not just us. I feel comfortable saying pretty much every country factors in, okay, as a soft consideration, the nationality of the applicant of a tourist visa, right? It's just a fact of life. We don't have to agree with it. We don't have to think it's great. It's just the way it is, okay? If a person is applying for a tourist visa to your country and they come from a country that has a strong economy, that's first world, that there's a lot of opportunity, right? Well, people, adjudicators feel more comfortable granting that visa. If they come from a country that is known, for producing desperate people and big numbers of visa overstays and that type of thing, those people are going to have to run a harder gauntlet in order to get the approval. So the point I'm trying to make is that even there is still a cudgel that remains for those countries, even if they don't offer visa-free access to a particular, country, they can still make things more difficult for that country based off of the terms, right? The default terms that they give for approved tourist visa applications. But yeah, I generally think, and I think we probably see eye to eye on this, Jay. It's that's less of a cudgel than just saying, hey, you have visa-free access now, we're gonna strip this visa-free access, right? And this is why I think we are gonna see more countries offer CBI that do not have this, visa-free access to, a lot of Western countries, and as a result are just more insulated to those considerations. Okay, so I wrote a little list here, and this is kind of these are just notes from an article that I'm writing. What are the attack surfaces for mobility benefits of CBI? Okay, and I kind of alluded to some of them, but I'll just list them. Okay, the way I see some of them. Okay, the most kind of headline ones: visa-free access being stripped. Number one. Okay, number two. The possible introduction of a visa bond requirement. Okay, so a person gets a citizenship from a certain country. Okay, and then another country says, okay, if you want to visit our country, even if you apply for a visa, even if it's not visa free, okay, we're going to require a bond, right? The United States currently just started a pilot visa bond program. They've listed in the temporary rule, the temporary federal rule, that people who acquired citizenship by investment could be subject to this bond in the future. But as of now, Department of State hasn't actually mentioned any CBI countries just yet. Okay, but the groundwork is laid for that. Number three, exclusion from visa treaties, right? So we've spoken about this before. Okay, a country can say, a country has a visa treaty with another country. Okay, hey, we offer these residency eligibility to each other's citizens, based off of business or employment or whatever it is. But you know what? We're excluding your citizens if they acquired your country's citizenship by investment, right? And one of the big examples we've used is the U.S. E2 non-immigrant investor treaty, right? Fourth attack vector that I think we're seeing or is shaping up is non-recognition of the citizenship, okay, for AML or KYC purposes, okay, / maybe they recognize the citizenship, but they're just not going to accept that country's documentation, okay, for legal ID, okay, for KYC AML purposes. I see that as a fourth vulnerability. These are the things that I'm keeping an eye on, and I think people should keep an eye on, if they're, whatever, fans of the industry, or they're thinking about getting CBI, or if they already have a CBI and they want to know, what things are going to look like going forward. Privacy is central. I want to talk about privacy for a moment. Okay. in order for a foreign country, to discriminate against you based off of the method that you obtained your citizenship by, they have to know how you obtained that citizenship. Okay, that's a privacy issue, right? To some extent, people who have citizenships by investment are going to have their hands tied, right? If they're filling applications, for example, under penalty of perjury, right? They're going to have to decide, right? If that application asks, whether they obtained a certain citizenship by investment, they're going to have to decide how to go. Okay, are they going to lie? Are they going to be, forthright and suffer the consequences? Or are they going to possibly withdraw? Maybe say, hey, you know what? This applying for this benefit is not worth it enough to me to disclose to this foreign government that I obtained this citizenship by investment. But one thing that citizens by investment can control is just their own, like Bruce Rivers, the criminal lawyer on YouTube, calls it self-snitching. He's not the only one, but he really, I think, popularized that term, self-snitching. And not that getting CBI is a crime. Obviously, there's nothing criminal about it. But what I would call the corollary to self-snitching is just blabbing. Okay, blabbing about the countries you have citizenship in, and the methods by which you got those citizenship. Hand in hand with being careful about your own statements is choosing professionals, okay, true professionals who assist you in this program. Okay, I tweeted about Andrew Tate. Okay, Andrew Tate was, obviously, everybody knows who Andrew Tate is, one of the most controversial guys on earth, if not the most controversial. A bunch of journalists caught wind that he may have gotten Vanuatu citizenship by investment, and somehow they contacted the agent that Tate used, and the agent confirmed Tate's identity and the fact that he got Vanuatu citizenship by investment. I mean, that to me is like shocking. I don't think I would be surprised if Tate consented to his identity being given out to snooping journalists. If he did, okay, fine, fair play. Okay, I would have nothing against that agency, but I just find that hard to believe. I suspect that just his agency was caught off guard, being contacted by journalists, and they just spilled the beans. So these are considerations, and then of course, I mean, I probably should have listed first countries that publicize the fact of getting citizenships, right? I think that's also something that has to be considered as well, right? So, if to cut something off, I mean, to cut off the attack vector, at the bud, be private about how you got the citizenship, what citizenship you have, number one, and then how you got the citizenship. So, people are limited. You can't necessarily be private in all contexts, but to the extent that you can, exercise second citizenship privacy and don't make it easy to be discriminated against based off of this criteria. Jay, are you familiar with the Mehul Choksi affair?
I'm not, actually. But when you talked about keeping citizenships private, I remember seeing a guy post on Reddit about getting Cambodian citizenship by investment, and with like the box of the agent that he used, posting pictures of it.
Yeah, I don't think that's a good idea. I mean, I don't know that guy's particular circumstances. I mean, it's plausible that, I've said before, I said it on, I think, our 20-something space. Look, everybody's profile is specific, right? Are there some people out there who believe that they get enough benefit from publicizing all their citizenships that it's worth the risk? Sure, maybe there's some people out there that think that's the case. Okay, and I guess I'm thinking about customers who themselves kind of turn around and try to become mobility influencers and build a profile and market and get commissions. For those, I mean, if you're trying to build a brand based off of saying, look at me, I have 5 passports. Okay, maybe you've made the calculation that you think the risk to you of publicizing all those citizenships is worth the benefit and clout or whatever credibility you think you're getting by doing so. I don't think that's the case for the vast majority of people who publicize their citizenships. I think it's just that they have not considered. I think people just don't think about these attack vectors, right? Of extraterritorial application of the law of your country of citizenship, right? I don't think people are thinking about those attack vectors. So, I mean, I don't know that I didn't see that post on Reddit that you mentioned, Jay, that Cambodian guy, but my first instinct would be that he's probably just trying to floss for ego. But I don't know. Who knows? Maybe he got some. I mean, can you add any more context? Was there any reason that he was posting those or
It
posting the
seemed
proof?
like he was potentially developing a profile to try to start marketing, but I couldn't exactly tell. The website that I don't remember if it was a website or like an Instagram page or something, but he was trying to start doing influencing, it looked like.
Yeah, okay. I mean, look, obviously there's probably somebody out there listening to this. Maybe they're going to come and say everybody has the right to do it. Yeah, obviously everybody has the right. Do whatever you like. If you love flossing and fanning 3, 4, or 5 passports, more power to you. My goal is just basically to raise these issues to light because I think these are really latent vulnerabilities. They're there now. It's just they're not that public yet. Okay, because I just think they haven't been realized yet. Right. So yeah, that's. I mean, I see this the privacy issue, the second citizenship privacy issue going hand in hand with the future of citizenships by investment. Right. The more CBIs are under the radar with enforcement. Okay. Agencies as well as political parties or political movements, especially on the left, hate the rich movements, etc. The better off the benefits, the more insulated the benefits of those citizenships are going to be, right? But the more public people are with their citizenships by investment, that means obviously the larger the pool is going to be of controversial figures or even criminals, okay, that have a citizenship by investment or a passport by investment and use that in some way that could be construed as furthering their crime or their cover up or whatever, then obviously that, I mean, I wish it wasn't the case, but that type of behavior reflects negatively and jeopardizes the benefits, the mobility benefits of all CBIs, citizens by investment. And I mean, I want to just take an opportunity. 99% of citizens by investment are totally upstanding, people. Okay, these are people who either want a plan B. So on the Western side, American side, it tends to be people who kind of fall down this rabbit hole, the sovereign individual, and realizing their vulnerability of only having one citizenship or two citizenships, and they want a plan B, even if they have no immediate plans to use that plan B. They want a plan B, okay, or among the same profile, they're what I call renunciation curious in the future. Okay, they don't have any plans to renounce, but they consider that maybe at some point in the future they want to renounce. Those people get citizenships by investment from the Middle East, from Africa, from some of the poor Asian countries. A big CBI profile is people who want a second citizenship so that they can obtain visa-free access, right? Vast majority of these people are totally upstanding individuals, good people. Not even most of them are not even tweeting or being really that public online. But the 1%, it's even less than 1%. I'm convinced the less than 1% that either get the CBI and then try to do something bad with it. Okay, which you could make the argument that's what Mehul Choksi did. Mehul Choksi, okay, I guess I'll just explain the situation real quickly. Indian national, okay, is accused of defrauding the Punjab National Bank of India from 2011 to 2008 over 1.8 billion with a B US dollars. The allegation is that he defrauded them over that entire 7-year period, but the fraud was only discovered in 2018. He obtained, around the time that the allegations were being made against him, he obtained citizenship in Antigua and Barbuda. He moved to Antigua and Barbuda. Okay, India has been extremely interested in trying to extradite him. They are pursuing him doggedly. Okay, to extradite him. He had this issue, this thing come up. Okay, which is still kind of shrouded in mystery, whereby he disappeared from Antigua and then he showed up in Dominica. Okay, and he says he was kidnapped. Okay, he says he was kidnapped. Indian and some other officials say that he staged his own kidnapping. He left Antigua and then showed up in Dominica. Why Dominica? Because he perceived that Dominica is less likely to extradite him back to India. Okay. Now, I tweeted yesterday that I read financial crime investigator Kenneth Rehawk's 28-page report on the Choksi affair. Really interesting report. I suggest anybody who's interested in this take a look at his report. He has primary source documents in there. He really tried to dig deep in evaluating what happened to Mehul Choksi. But, and by the way, I'm not endorsing the findings of the report. Everybody should read the report with their own critical eye. Okay. But what Kenneth wrote in that report was that Mehul Choksi most likely staged his own disappearance from Antigua, not with the plan of going to Dominica, but with the plan of going to Cuba. Okay. And when he was en route from Cuba, he got a call on a satellite phone. Okay. That indicated that whatever deal he thought he had in Cuba or safe harbor was no longer available to him. And so mid route, he switched up and instead went to Dominica. Okay. Fast forward, that was about, I think, 3 years ago. I think that happened in 2022, maybe 2022, 2021, if I'm not mistaken. He moved to Belgium, okay, for cancer treatment. And he's been fighting extradition to India from Belgium for, I believe, the last 2 years or so. That's the Mehul Choksi affair. Okay. It's been used against CBI. Okay, criminals get these passports. Mehul Choksi is another one of the fraudsters that uses CBI in order to escape law enforcement, etc. And in fact, Kenneth Rehoke, the same guy, the investigator who wrote that program, he's kind of been also one of those voices that kind of uses this against CBI. The industry as a whole. And me and Kenneth have gone back and forth on that on LinkedIn comments before, because I've kind of pushed back against that element as well. But that's, unfortunately, that's a poor reflection on all the people who get the CBIs. One bad actor makes it, look bad for all of the, the people who get this CBI. So, yes, I mean, the more, let's say hypothetical, let's say Mehul Choksi, he did all the same, let's say the same allegations were against him, but let's say he didn't have Antiguan citizenship, or let's say he had Antiguan citizenship, but it was not publicized that he had Antiguan citizenship. Okay, let's say that for whatever reason, he was resisting extradition to India from another country. Well, that pressure and that heat on the CBI and the CBI industry probably would not have resulted, right? The guy that's trying to abscond from justice allegedly would have had the CBI, but there's not that same colorable argument that he tried to use the citizenship by investment in order to evade justice. So, yeah, so privacy, right? Privacy, second citizenship privacy, for individual benefit as well as for group benefit, right? So for applicants who get the CBI, I think they're better off just being private about the citizenship for their own benefit, and also for the group. I mean, to be honest, and privacy in 2025. It's not shady. It's security. Privacy is security. Okay. People have vulnerabilities based off of their citizenships. People are discriminated against unlawfully based on their citizenships. There's no need to feel, that you should share all those citizenships. And I don't think there's any shame at all. I don't think there's anything shady about it. It's obviously not illegal to just be private with the mobility benefits that a person acquires to the extent possible, right? It's not, as I said before, it's not always possible in a given context to keep your citizenship private. We got Chris Lord here. Chris, I've invited you to speak just in case. It's fine if you want to listen, but if you got anything to say, I've seen you on previous spaces before. If you have any questions or comments or disagreements, we're all for disagreement here. We're all for pushing back. You're welcome to step up and speak, as well as anybody. If anybody's listening anonymously and wants to talk, don't be shy. Come, re-enter the space non-anonymously. Hit the request button. I'll prove it right away, and let's hear what you got to say.
Porfies, I don't know if you've done this, but it's really important to talk about the extraterritorial laws that apply to people who are citizens of multiple countries. I don't know if you've looked at like the laundry list of extraterritorial laws that would apply to you as a citizen of a specific country, whether it's Iran or somewhere else. But it's a very long list, and some of them you might have not even known if you weren't a lawyer. These things are crimes, and they apply to me based on my citizenship.
Absolutely.
I don't know if many people know about this who are not in the legal area of society.
No, you're absolutely right. Yeah, we have spoken about this, and we're going to continue to speak about it because it's just, I think it's You're absolutely right, Jay. It's a concept that goes right over people's heads. It's not intuitive, in my opinion, if you're not in this world. So yeah, I mean, obviously it's, you know, dependent on the country, right? But yeah, there's a few categories that I have that are just common that we just see commonly coming up. Okay, so first of all, this is what we're talking about. We're talking about extraterritorially imposed obligations and or laws, okay, based off of being a citizen. So what do I mean? Let's unpack this in plain language. It means you're a citizen of country X, and country X's laws apply to you even when you're outside of country X. Okay, that's what we're talking about here when we say extraterritorially imposed laws or obligations. Okay, so this is an incomplete list, but this is just some common ones that come up. Domestic mandatory military service, right? So in many countries, if you owe mandatory military service to that country, you do not escape that, you know, that obligation because you are outside of the country or live elsewhere. Now, some countries have a waiver, temporary waiver based off of residency in a foreign country. A lot of countries offer that. Okay, but you got to go through that process, you know, of eligibility, applying for that waiver, etc. Right. Number two, international sanctions. U.S. is a big one. Okay, so if you're a citizen of a country that is imposing international sanctions on another country, you're subject to criminal and civil liability, okay, for violating those sanctions, even if you violate them from outside of that country. Okay, so if you're an American citizen, I'll just bring up an example. You live in India, and you import or export some, you know, products to Iran, okay, in violation of U.S. sanctions against Iran, you're liable. Okay, it doesn't matter that you're not, you know, that your company is not, you know, in the U.S. or that you didn't do it from the U.S. You did it from India. You as a U.S. person are liable. That obligation follows you. So that's number two. Number three, restriction slash prohibition on renunciation of citizenship. Number four, foreign military service restriction. Okay, so some countries have in their domestic law a prohibition on you joining a foreign military. Okay, number six, service in foreign legislature. Okay, that could be an extraterritorially imposed obligation. I think we're on the number seven, financial transactions in prohibited countries. Okay, so you know you're a citizen of country X, you go to country Y, okay, and you want to invest in their stock market. You want to open a bank account. You want to, you know, you want to buy some sort of financial instrument, okay. Eight, financial transactions with targeted individuals. Okay, so in the United States, we have something called the SDN list. Okay, the specially designated nationals. Okay, so these are people that the U.S. government, individuals, not just countries, has targeted for sanctioning. If you're a U.S. person, does not matter where you live in the world, doesn't matter if you're a U.S. citizen, also a Russian citizen, also whatever citizen. If you are a U.S. citizen, actually also if you're an LPR, if you're a legal permanent resident, and you do business, financial transactions with those individuals, and it comes to the attention of the U.S. Department of Treasury, you're in big trouble, civilly as well as criminally. Another category: travel to prohibited countries. Okay, so the United States have been, you know, restricted from traveling to Cuba, obviously, and other countries throughout the world. Doesn't matter, you know. Does it? You don't escape this by saying, oh, I'm a dual citizen and I travel to Cuba on my other passport, not my American passport. No, that doesn't work like that. Okay, you're subject extraterritorially to this law as a U.S. citizen, and it applies to you irrespective of what other citizenships or passports you have. Bigamy, okay, restrictions on bigamy, okay, restrictions on bribes, okay, so the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act, okay, so United States prohibits U.S. persons, U.S. companies from bribing foreign officials in order to get business. The problem is in some parts of the world, that's just the way business is done. Okay, you just cannot compete in certain industries in foreign countries if you don't pay to play. Okay, that's a law that applies. I mean, granted, the Trump admin and the DOJ, they've kind of they've implemented. I'm not sure if the policy is formalized. I think maybe there was an internal DOJ memos basically saying, look, we don't want to, we're not looking to prosecute violations of the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act, right? So it seems like there's kind of a temporary reprieve from law enforcement of that, but the law remains. The law is on the books. All it takes is a change in policy by the Trump administration or the change in administration for people to be, prosecuted and for that to be enforced again. Speech, restricted speech. Okay, so if your country is restricting certain speech, okay, you can be targeted for that extraterritorially, even if you made the speech abroad. And there was that recent case of that English comic who made some comments, I guess some spicy comments about trans people and the trans movement. And he boarded a plane for London Heathrow. And when he arrived in London, he had 4 or 5 Met police officers waiting for him, and they arrested him. And I think he even had a panic attack, and his blood pressure spiked, and all that type of stuff. So this is a totally incomplete list, but these are just some categories, common categories that show up that I mapped out, right? So I've been a big advocate, as I'm sure you know by now, Jay, for you got to look at citizenship acquisition as being a balance sheet. You pick up the pros, and marketers are good at talking about the pros because they have something to sell. But you got to look at the other side of that balance sheet, okay, which is what are the potential cons? And I have an article titled, it's a simple article. It's titled "When to Know." It's something like "When to Know if how to know." Or sorry, when a second citizenship obligation is a deal breaker. I think that's the title of the article. And it's a simple article, but the gist of the article is I split second country of citizenship laws into 2 categories, okay, for decision making. Those that only impact a person territorially and those that impact them extraterritorially. And I make the case in that argument that if you're considering naturalizing as a citizen in another country or being verified, okay, you should focus on the extraterritorially imposed obligations more than the territorially ones. Why? Very simple, because the territorially imposed obligations you can get away from by booking a flight and leaving. I don't say to discard those entirely. I don't say discard. I don't say ignore, okay, only the territorially imposed obligations. I say they should be less of a deal breaker, okay, than the extraterritorially imposed obligations. An extraterritorially imposed obligation based off of being a citizen is going to follow you everywhere. It will follow you everywhere. That's more important of a category, in my opinion, to focus on. And that's what I tell my clients. That's what I tell my consuls, okay, when they're thinking about, these categories. So this is a list. I think the list is, what do I have on this? I think 10 categories on the list. I also have, for anybody who wants to listen, I have an article from 3 years ago called The 4 Red Flags of Second Citizenship. And I basically say that, I basically identify what I consider the 4 extraterritorially imposed red flags that are the combination of showing up the most and the most impactful when you're considering getting a second citizenship. And it's citizenship-based taxation, prohibition on renunciation of citizenship, mandatory military service, number 3, and subjugation to international sanctions, okay, as number 4. This is what I consider kind of like the tip of the spear, the 4 most important categories to look at when a person is considering second citizenship. Does that answer your question, Jay? I guess it was more of a statement than a question.
Yeah, of course. That was a good overview.
Appreciate it. Yeah. So this is I keep saying, oh, I'm writing an article. I have, like, without exaggeration, I have like 35 to 40 partially written articles. There's just so many interesting elements to write about that I sometimes get distracted or thrown off. But this is part of an expanded article that I'm writing to bring light, to shed more light on this dynamic. And the reason I think the dynamic is important and growing importance is because the more speech and commerce is online, and with the rise of AI, the easier it is for your conduct, okay, to be discovered by everybody, including your countries of citizenship, including prosecutorial agencies in your country of citizenship. So these 2 things increasing, okay, on one side, increase in speech and commerce online. Number 2, increase in the power of AI makes it much easier, okay, for people who write freely, who talk freely, and even people who don't actually write freely, okay, but just conduct any business online. The easier it becomes for those people to become targeted, okay, for prosecution of domestic law. And I'm a big believer of, not a believer, but I'll say believer. there's so many laws and regulations on the book. Like as the book Three Felonies a Day writes about, everybody is committing some sort of crime every single day, okay, without knowing it. Okay, it's really scary thing to think about, but I do believe that that's the case. Okay, people, people are unintentionally committing crimes and misdemeanors daily because there's just thousands and thousands of pages of law. It doesn't even matter. Even if you're a lawyer, you cannot read this all. You cannot understand all this. You can operate and guide yourself through heuristics, okay, of behavior and conduct that you think is going to keep you legal, right? But the fact of the matter is, this is just we have, every country has more law than anybody can possibly read or understand to direct their life, right? And so how so where's the control valve? Okay, where's the variable? It's in prosecutorial discretion. Okay, who gets actually targeted for prosecution? Who comes under the watchful eye? Okay, who comes on the radar of a prosecutor? And yeah, it's just, I think it's easier and easier now. I mean, especially obviously, if you are a public figure, if you tweet, if you tussle in the comments, okay, if you argue with people online, if you make controversial statements online, I mean, you should be considering these factors, even more, I would say.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. I would say, especially in countries that are looking to target specific people with specific views, there's a heuristic, for lack of a better word, find me the man and I'll find you the crime. And
Exactly.
when we're seeing here in the US, for example, nobody would think of John Bolton as being somebody who is just off committing crimes every day, but he got investigated, and it sounds like they found something that they think that may have been a crime that he may have committed, and they charged him, and now there's an arrest warrant out for him. Things can
Exactly.
turn on a dime.
Exactly. The burden of being investigated, especially federally, is so great that the process can be the punishment, right? Process is the punishment. John Richardson says that all the time, right? And others as well. There's another great expression, right, which I think is really wise, right? Which is, you might be able to beat the rap, but can you beat the ride? Even if you arrive at a trial and get a dismissal, right? Even if you fight, okay, even if you are not quote unquote guilty, your life is going to be turned upside down, if not ruined, okay, by a dogged prosecutor, especially a federal prosecutor that pursues, pursues an investigation and charges against you, right? So, obviously, to avoid all that, you try not to come under the come on the radar of prosecutorial agencies by being public, especially with conduct that could be weaponized against you, that could be unfairly weaponized against you. All right, 12:03 p.m. We started a little bit late today. We started 11:04 Pacific Standard, so we've been going for about 59, 60 minutes here. Okay, I think we're going to wrap up. Any last questions, comments? Anybody want to speak before I wrap up and give my pitch for our next mobility space topic, which is going to be a really good one?
Yeah, sure. I'll ask you, what countries do you think could be next to open citizenship by investment programs?
Good question, Jay. So I don't have any inside knowledge or info. I'm not CBI is not that important, as far as my own practice, for me to kind of be in the weeds about that. So I couldn't name specific countries for you, but I'll just state the category. Okay, I think relatively poor countries that have poor visa-free access, I think that's where the spate of CBIs is going to come from, right? So of new CBIs. So I'm thinking about. So I think Africa. I think we're going to see more from Africa. I wouldn't be surprised if we see from some Middle Eastern countries as well. Yeah. So I mean, I don't have the inside baseball to tell you exactly from where. Oh, island nations. I would also say so. Some small island nations as well. I think we're going to see more of that as well too, especially ones that don't have visa-free access to desirable destinations.
So more
Oh,
countries like Nauru.
yes, yeah, um, yeah, yeah. It's safe to say 12,000 population or so. That's really a really small country, but yeah, yeah. I think that's safe to say. And I gotta say, I mean, Vanuatu gets beaten up on a lot in the industry because because of relatively lax due diligence, as well as the fact that they got stripped of visa-free access to the EU. But I gotta say, I mean, I don't think they would have experienced that much blowback for trying to throw Andrew Tate under the bus when news was broken that Andrew Tate obtained Vanuatuan citizenship by investment, and they didn't do so. And I gotta say, I find that's pretty impressive to me. I mean, he's about as hot as it gets, okay, when it comes to controversial figures and probably figures that countries generally don't want to be associated with, and they stood firm at least so far, right? So again, I mean, I know I'm a broken record on this, but I am more and more thinking that if you are interested in CBI, aim for the country that doesn't trade on their visa-free access, and doesn't really care that much about being pressured by foreign governments or the EU. They just want to get their little revenue, issue you a passport, okay, that's hopefully recognized by all the countries in the world, and give you immediate highest right of entry, residency, and work authorization in the country. I'm more and more thinking that that's if you care about picking up a citizenship by investment, that's going to stand the test of time, and the benefits are going to stand the test of time. Don't try to hit a home run and get all the bells and whistles. Get the basic, like get the Corolla, right? Get the Corolla, just something that runs for 200,000 miles. Okay, no bells and whistles, point A to point B. Okay, but is affordable, and aim less for the I don't know what you'd say. I mean, I don't know, the Mercedes S class or whatever.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. I think the Botswana program might actually be one of the best value for people's money, all things considered.
Yeah, we'll see. I'm still unpacking and learning about it, but I definitely would consider Botswana to be a contender so far in that category. Here's the other thing. I'll just add this one last thing. Um, I think a new battleground is going to be the terms for revocation of citizenship of these CBI countries. Um, Hardly any applicants look into or know or have an agent that looks at and brings to their attention the conditions for revocation of a citizenship by investment in a country that they're about to naturalize in. But those matter. Those matter a lot. Okay. And I mean, there's a few really big red flags to me that are out there. Okay. I don't have a problem with conditions for revocation when there's fraud in the application, okay, or a material misrepresentation. That's no problem, okay. I think that's fine. I think that's fair, and I think that's necessary for a country to maintain the integrity of its citizenship. But I have a problem with some others. Okay, some other terms. Okay, so specifically, I mean, the big threshold issue, one big threshold issue, if not the, is revocation of citizenship for conduct or alleged conduct that happened after the person acquired the citizenship. So countries that try to maintain a right to revoke the citizenship if the applicant is alleged to have brought the country in disrepute, okay, or something like that. That's a big problem for me, big red flag. Second big red flag, and I'm reminded of this, Jay, because you brought up Nauru, is countries that have just ridiculously unreasonable process terms, okay, for an attempted revocation. Nauru, and I don't know if you saw my tweet thread from a year ago, Jay. Nauru's Citizenship Act, okay, that created the legal basis for their citizenship by investment, gives an applicant, or not an applicant, a respondent 7 days to respond to a notice of revocation of their citizenship by their authority, their director. 7 days. Okay. That is so abbreviated as to be, in my opinion, practically worthless. Okay, to get a notice, what does the person have to do in that 7 days practically? First of all, they have to receive the notice. Most people who are getting that citizenship are not in the country. So I don't know, there's no mention in the code of whether they get notice, by mail or shipping or email, but they have to receive the notice, read it, understand it, interview counsels, interview lawyers to get a lawyer, okay, to help them with this, have the lawyer investigate the allegations against them and why that's the basis, okay, for revocation of citizenship, put together a response to that, okay, so put together the evidence packet, the brief. Well, actually, I even skipped a step. Investigate it, okay. When the lawyer finds out, okay, hey, this is the allegations against you, they need to investigate to find out where the document, hey, that's other client, probably to other client, okay, give me every document that you have that's related to these allegations. And then the lawyer has to go and do their investigation, both factual and legal, okay, both find the facts as well as do the legal research, put together the response and submit the response. 7 days, to me, that 7 days, I suspect that is designed, okay, to make it so that it's useless, basically. Okay, so as a result, the way I see it is, the notice of the intent to revoke de facto is going to act as a revocation. Okay, even if it's a baseless allegation, very few people, if any, are going to be able to even give a response to that in 7 days. So that to me is a huge problem. Okay, there's other issues I have with the terms for revocation of Nauru citizenship, and I wrote some of those in that tweet thread from about a year ago. Okay, I'll link it to this space in case anybody wants to read it. That's a huge, huge problem. I have not seen anybody else write about this. Okay, I have not seen any agent, any consultant, any lawyer. I found this because I went to the primary source documents, right? Anytime I'm looking at, a new CBI, okay, I want to see what the primary source documents, the act, the regulations, all that type of stuff. And I saw this. I don't think anybody who's naturalizing who's getting CBI in Nauru knows about that. And maybe, to be fair, maybe some of them, even if they knew about, these really bad conditions for revocation, really bad process terms, maybe they still would get the citizenship, right? But my whole thing is, they got to know about it. Okay, if you're getting a citizenship by investment, or if you're shopping for citizenship by investment, you got to have a real consultant or advisor or lawyer. What I define as a real consultant is somebody who talks to you about the whole picture, the pros and the cons. Not somebody who's just selling you, visa free, not just reading headline terms from a Wikipedia article. Any monkey can do that. That does not take expertise. That doesn't take analysis. It just doesn't take skill. Okay, applicants need to know, okay, what's the actual attack vector on the back end. So this is a kernel, Jay. Like, this is like a really small thing. There's just, I think there's very few people talking about these vulnerabilities. Kenneth Rehawk obviously talks about, I think he goes overboard actually, but he does talk about these, which is a valuable thing. I talk about them sometimes, but I believe that this is going to be a future battleground, because most people, okay, if they knew about this, okay, if it's brought to their attention, they might still get the CBI, but that's going to inform their decision. That is absolutely going to inform their decision. I think you would be nuts, okay, to just decline, say, nope, I don't want to know. I'm paying $160,000. I'm paying whatever for this citizenship. I don't really care to know, okay, how easily it could be taken away from me. No, I think everybody wants to know whether they go ahead with it or not. I think that's going to be a future battleground, and I think it's a much needed battleground, because I think that's the only thing that's going to keep these programs accountable. Okay, why would you not have these terms for revocation of citizenship if you're one of these countries, unless there's pressure put on you by the industry? Okay, unless you're put on blast for having these ridiculous terms, why wouldn't you? Okay, you just have a get out of jail free card. Okay, yeah, let's raise $150 million, okay, selling these citizenships. And if one of them creates too much heat, if the Guardian comes sniffing around, okay, and targeting us because we gave citizenship to, a dirt bag, okay, we're just going to get rid of them, okay. It's their get out of free jail card. And as long as there's not a cost to imposing to them for imposing those unreasonable terms, I would not expect them to do otherwise. So I think that's gonna be an issue. And to be frank, I'm going to play my own little part. I mean, I'm not that big of a voice. I'm a small voice, but I'm going to play my part in that, because that's because I have to, first of all, like, for me in faith, to recommend different things, to steer people, to guide people. I got to know myself about these things. And obviously, if I think it's relevant to the applicant, then I'm going to write about it and obviously, put that info out there.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with everything you've just said here. I would also put as kind of a third vulnerability there, countries with very weak rule of law, because even if there are no specific terms for revocation of citizenship, certain countries in the world, and we could talk about which ones, but maybe not today. Certain countries are known that are more autocratic, are known for stripping citizenship from citizens that they have granted citizenship to, both by broad categories and by decrees of the leader. Then additionally, with the process issue there, that's an important term to read. And I guess to put this in perspective, as a law student, I can say that to put together a brief, do research, all of that stuff, for us, that's normally at least half a semester that we're given to put all of that together for a class paper or project. So 1 week is, if that attorney in Nauru, if you were able to get that person to put together a case like that in a week, it's nigh impossible.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I tweeted right after Sao Tome announced their citizenship by investment. I tweeted out that you got to understand the mobility benefits of a country that you're naturalizing in are only as good as the legal system that backs them up. Okay. Now, what does this mean in practice, right? Somebody might be listening to this and this just sounds like, kind of abstract, like legal talk. Okay. Here's my example. Okay. You get citizenship. That citizenship has benefits. You're denied one of those benefits, either domestically in that country, okay, or abroad. Okay. What do? Denials of mobility benefits are made by bureaucrats. They're made by low-level people, okay, border officers, okay, visa adjudicators at consulates, okay. You don't. I think some people who are not, have that much contact with the law, they might think that like rights, they might have an idea that like your rights are always protected. You always have this, access as a practical matter to your right, as if you were in court, okay, before an impartial adjudicator arguing a case. That's not the way it happens at the first instance. This is the way it works. Your right is denied, okay, at the low level, okay, at the first instance. And then you have to appeal that, okay, either an administrative appeal or potentially a judicial appeal, okay, in order to challenge that, okay. Well, if the judicial appeal gets you, if your attempt to get a judicial appeal gets you no day in court or a corrupt day in court or a useless day in court, okay, well, you're going to have difficulty in asserting that claim, or you're going to be totally unable to assert that claim. And in countries with really, really, really poor rule of law, maybe there's not even a court, okay, for you to actually try to make that claim, okay, which means as a practical matter, even though the law, okay, what's written in the statutes, the regs, the constitution of that country might give you the right, as a practical matter, you're being deprived of that right. Okay, so that's absolutely right, Jay. And it's a really important thing to keep in mind as more countries it seems like from more poor countries offer CBI. Okay, you have to understand, okay, that the strength of the benefit of that citizenship by investment is only as good as the legal system and rule of law that's backing it up. Yeah, and last thing I'll say, yeah, I mean, a semester, right? There's some talented lawyers out there that really put things together, very quickly. Okay, highly skilled, but to me, challenging. I would say if the period of time was 30 days, okay, to respond to an allegation of some sort of conduct that could get a person stripped of Nauru citizenship, I would say 30 days is extremely, extremely short. Okay, but maybe for the maybe firstly working a standard where even though a person might not be able to put up a good response, they could at least get a response out. Okay, potentially with the help of a lawyer. 7 days is just, I mean, I just cannot. I cannot think anything other than that is done by design. Okay, that is done by design to make it so that the allegation going out, the notice going out, functionally serves as the person being, having their citizenship be revoked. So I don't like those terms. Now I don't know enough about Nauru domestic law to know whether the person would have a strong claim, to that 7 days being unreasonable under domestic law. I don't know, but it's already a bad sign that that the headline term of that section of the Nationality Act is trying to give a person just 7 days. So I challenge you, Jay. I mean, I don't know if what if you're looking to do immigration or citizenship when you graduate, or if this is your interest, but I challenge you to find any writing out there, okay, about this term of Nauru citizenship. We've all seen the marketing materials, especially when the program was announced. We all see the companies that are selling the citizenship. I challenge you to find anybody out there that's written about that condition for loss, which is pretty damn important in my opinion. If you're paying 150K plus for a citizenship.
I guess I would say that I personally think there's a lot of parroting done by people who are looking at, what did this other consultant or salesperson say about Nauru? Let me just say the same thing with my own spin on it, and very little reading of the source text of Nauru's citizenship by investment. And this probably goes for many countries. I don't know exactly what the terms are of most of these, aside from Nauru and Sao Tome that I looked at.
Yep, I'm linking right now. Do this right now before I forget. I'm linking my tweets it was from November of 2024. You're absolutely right. I mean, look, I don't want to malign all CBI agents. There's some good ones. There's some very, very good ones. But there's a ton of them, including some of the biggest influencers that out there. Okay, big names. Okay, people who have big names, lots of content. They don't look at primary source. They cannot read primary source. They don't know the law behind this. They're parroting headline Wikipedia terms. By the way, Jay, I linked my tweet with the links to the primary source regarding the Nauru terms.
I'm going to reread that.
Yeah. A lot of parroting. And look, let's just be real. I mean, if you're a salesperson, you're not incentivized to talk about, a shitty aspect of something that you're selling. Like, you're just not incentivized to talk about holistic. I mean, salespeople sell, right? ABC, always be closing. I mean, it's just, CBI agents have their place in the industry. I definitely think they do. But if you're a potential aspiring sovereign individual, if you're somebody who's trying to pursue second citizenship, third, fourth, fifth citizenship, you must know the difference. You have to know the difference between a salesperson and a real deal consultant. Okay, consultant / advisor / lawyer. Okay, and the second category, it's somebody who understands the attack vectors, has expertise to know the attack vectors, and the ethics to tell them to you, even though it might result in them, having to forego $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 in earnings if you pass up getting the citizenship. Okay, so it's cool. 1224 Pacific Standard. We've been going for an hour and 20. This has been a great conversation. Thursday is going to be our 44th mobility space. We're coming in on 50 mobility spaces this year. We kind of speed ran this. We've been doing 2 per week since I started, and I think I started in the spring. We're going to do 50 mobility spaces this year. After 50, I'm going to revisit the format. I'm going to take a little break, and I'm going to consider how and what form in which to continue the spaces. I think what I'm probably going to do is continue the spaces weekly instead of twice per week. And I think I'm going to launch my podcast, which is going to be more interview focused. I'll probably take another professional or somebody, and I'll sit them down for an interview. I think that's what I'm going to do going forward, but I'm still, jury's still out on that. So this is our 43rd mobility space. Number 44 is Thursday, 11 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. And we are going to talk about speech and mobility. Okay. What are the attack vectors that people are having now and are going to have in the future, okay, to their ability to move between countries based off of their speech? So obviously we're going to talk a lot about ETAs, okay? Are there countries that are canceling ETAs, canceling visas, okay, based off people's speeches? Hint, hint, yes, there are. The United States is one of the worst offenders, unfortunately. And then secondly, even if countries are not doing it yet, is this something that we think is coming down the line? And I'll spill the beans. Yes, I think this is coming down the line. We're going to talk about that more in depth on Thursday, 11 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. That'll be mobility space number 44. Okay. Everybody is welcome. Everybody can speak. Don't be shy. Hit the request button. I'll approve it right away. And you can agree, ask a question, disagree. It's totally fine. Okay. We're all about debate. And we haven't really had that many we haven't had that many spicy moments yet on these spaces, but I'm all for it. Okay, just bring your facts. Okay, whatever it is, if you can agree, disagree, but just make sure you're basing it on something. But we want to welcome everybody. I want to thank all of our participants today. Thank you, Jay. Of course, it was a great conversation, and thank you all of our anonymous. I know you're out there, our anonymous listeners. So make sure to come back for Thursday, 11 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. Have a great week, everybody.